Welcome to the Project Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Gorrie, mom of a sweet baby girl and an ever-evolving entrepreneur. On this show, we will explore the intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. We will share stories of moms just like you and me with the goal of fostering community and comfort in knowing that we are not alone in our experiences. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to ensure you get all the updated episodes and releases. Welcome to today's episode of the Project Mom Podcast. Today, I am chatting with Danielle Desir Corbett. She is a mom to son baby K and has been the voice and face behind the Thought Card blog for the last 6 years. She has extended her voice to the podcast medium and has been the powerhouse behind the Thought Card podcast for the last 3 years. So Danielle, thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Beautiful intro, by the way. Short, but it still hit on all the points.
Thank you. I try. Sometimes I can get a little wordy. So my goal is to always be super clear on all of your wonderful offerings to the world. So I appreciate that. I'm excited because your blog and your podcast do a beautiful job of looking at real life, tangible tips around traveling and exploration, but also with the intention behind it of paying off debt and being intentional around building our wealth as individuals and as families. And what I also enjoyed from our initial conversation leading up to this call was this emotional maturity that you had when you were sharing with me a little bit more about your pregnancy and the unforeseen complications or circumstances that preceded his arrival. And I want to touch on all of those today. And with that, I think perhaps we just get started and dive in and let you take it from here. So can you walk us through the progression, perhaps starting with your transition into being a full-time entrepreneur, because that came first, correct? Right? You're the full-time entrepreneur and then became a mom throughout that journey. So perhaps let's start there. Can you give us a timeline or a progression on what that journey looks like?
Sounds great. So I started blogging in 2015 and it started off as a very general travel lifestyle blog. But then I quickly found my footing to talk about two of my biggest passions, which is travel and also managing your money. And I was realizing that I had student loan debt. I wanted to buy a house. I was just in my early 20s trying to figure things out. So I just started documenting my journey, and that the Thought Card has blossomed and grown so much. Over the last 6 years, close to 7 years, I've been growing my platform. I've also been side hustling. So this is didn't happen. I wish I knew about being a content creator, before college, or, things are so different. I think my life would have looked different. But generally, I just fell into content creation, following my passions, and I was side hustling extensively. And every year, I'm just building on my side hustle, building on as a freelance writer, writing books, launching the podcast, doing all these different things. And along that way, the pandemic hit in 2020, and we started thinking, we were home full-time, working full-time, thinking about what life would look like if I actually wanted to quit. And I was I can't do this. I make too much of my 9 to 5. I don't know how this is ever going to actually bridge the gap to make this possible. But, fast forward a year later, my husband actually came to me one day, randomly, not prompted. He said, "Hey, listen, if you really want to do this full time, you can quit. You can quit, but you have to put in the work to get there." So that inspired me to actually take it more seriously, to put a plan together, to put a quit plan, have a savings goal, build up my income streams. And I had a plan to leave corporate December 2021, but I had surpassed my goals that we were ready to quit by July. So by July, months ahead of time, I put my notice in. And I also found out that I was pregnant right after putting my notice in, which again, it's okay, am I going to step out and be my own boss, my own creative entrepreneur, or am I going to kind of go back to revert to corporate? So it's been a long journey. I've learned a lot along the way. And I think what's important is believing in yourself and also being creative to finding a way when there feels like there's no way. I think those are my strengths, is like creativity and finding a path, creating a path when you don't even see one.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to definitely touch on that because I think there's a lot of fear, right, that comes from making a change in what we perceive as security, right? Financial security. We're in something we know that we're good at. We thrive in this environment. And to make a change in and of itself is terrifying. But then you add this level of change around being a mom and what is that going to entail? You've never done that before, right? How do we now take on, caring for a life of another human being in that? There's a lot of fear that could come up and definitely uncertainty around what does my next step look like. So I really appreciate that transparency in that. So can we dive a little bit into the mindset that you had? So you're absolutely crushing it. You've achieved some of these goals that you set for yourself in order to get to a point where you felt ready to make that transition. And at some point, I want to touch on what some of those goals looked like so we can give some of the listeners some insight. But I want to touch on that mindset, right? You've been crushing these goals. You've now found out you're pregnant. You have maybe this opportunity to revert back. It wasn't too far gone, right? This opportunity. What was the mindset for you as you're making this decision?
Yeah, part of it was excitement, right? Because I have been seeing people quit their jobs. We're in the great resignation. Seeing people quit their jobs, excitement for the content that I'm creating and my business growing. So there was excitement, enthusiasm, but there was also a bit of fear and a bit of doubt because I've always had a steady paycheck. Since starting corporate, like for 7 years, a steady paycheck. I've used my 9 to 5 to build wealth. I was really good at my 9 to 5 job. There was just a lot of fear, but also a lot of excitement, which balanced off that fear. And the butterflies, like my husband says this, but I think he got this from like a UFC fighter, but I think it's John Jones. But John Jones said something to the extent of like, you can be excited and have butterflies as long as they fly in formation, which I think is so powerful. There is going to be butterflies, but we're all kind of going towards the same path. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing, which is part one. Part two is my family. I knew that my family was going to have a lot of questions, a lot of pushback. I know them very well. So I made sure to build that into my time frame. So I, let them know, hey, listen, I want to quit my job, and let them kind of have their fears and let them kind of do all the chitter chatter. And then month after month, hey, I'm hitting my goals. I'm crushing it. Like I have proof of concept. I've been doing this for 6 years. Like I let the results speak for itself, where by the time I left, they felt so much more comfortable. So if you're in a situation where your family is going to question you or going to have some pushback, I say share when you are 100% confident that you are going to make this decision and show the results. Like your results will speak for itself. And that for me has really, really helped because if I was uncertain, having all these doubts, and then I'm hearing more doubts from other people who are influential in my life, it would just crush my dreams. So part one is the introspection for you, but then part two is the family piece, which was important for me.
I really appreciate that because I think there is this dueling narrative of, I got to do this for me. I've got to show up for me. I'm going to put myself and my wants and my desires and my needs on the forefront, and I'm going to strive for these goals. But then you also recognize the power that your family plays in your life. And for not all of us have such active, extended families. And I have a very powerful narrative with my parents. I value their opinions dramatically. And so I think it's really important to recognize the influence that other people's opinions will have on your confidence or your ability to, continue to do it anyway, or to prove to them that this actually is the right path. And unfortunately, right? Well, fortunately and unfortunately, all of our lives are intertwined in that way. And people's opinions really do play a factor. We're only human, right? So recognizing that is huge. I'd love for you to share a little bit with us the thought process around setting those goals. So what actual goals, and you don't have to necessarily share with us too many of the actual details, but what kind of financial thresholds were you looking at? Did you want to be able to save X number? What were some of those goals that you wanted to check off before you felt confident enough to make the transition?
Yeah. So my original goal was to save 3 months worth of my salary. And it was two-pronged approach. One was to save, like have a nest to like land on. And then the other part of it was to earn enough income to show that, okay, I am ready to go full time. Right. So just in case if things don't work out, at least I have some runway to get another job. But also I needed to have proof that my business was making enough income for me to even consider that. So with that being said, I actually started off with a 3-month savings plan to be like, okay, I'm from my side hustle. I wanted to be able to save 3 months of household expenses. And my dad, who has also transitioned to become financially independent and he runs his own business, he's like, my daughter, I love you. I think you should expand that to 6 months. So I was like, okay. So I had an updated goal of like expanding. I had to save 6 months worth of household expenses from my side hustle. Because I wanted to have a proof of concept. Can I live off my side hustle? So that was the goal. And during that time, I was very intentional on taking on more work. I was intentional on raising my rates so that I can hit my goals. I also prioritize passive income as well. So I was looking at opportunities to earn more while doing a little bit of less work. But the 6-month savings goal was really, it proved that I can do it. It proved that I was making enough money to put money aside. And I'm so grateful. We're actually hitting on this time next month, it will be a year of being full-time. And I haven't had to touch that full-time fund at all, which is pretty good. Like, hey, you're doing enough where you could live and you don't have to, but if I had to, I have a place to pull from. I also want to say more practical. So after having the savings goal, I also created a going full-time bank account fund, which allowed me to see that money separate from everything else. And, I would update my family and my husband and be like, hey, we're just going right along. So the intentionality was there. I also think having the guidance of like my dad, who has gone through this, like going full time, to be like, hey, you may be having some oversight or undersight, so why don't you expand your savings goal a bit? I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, I love that. I think too, even just hearing your story for those who are listening who perhaps don't have, a father who is kind of in the day-to-day and kind of guiding them through some of these goals and these checkpoints. Even just hearing your story, I think is inspirational in the sense that it's doable. This is absolutely possible. And while it may take time is on our side. So how can we leverage the time to get us to a point where we are actually sailing, we are cruising? Can we support ourselves in this so that when we do transition over, there's maybe some unnecessary, or we remove any unnecessary stressors or pressure on ourselves? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners who perhaps don't take that time to set themselves up in that capacity take on more than they can chew, or take on clients that don't necessarily align with their vision and their values. And it takes a toll on everyone, I think, at that point. So I think just hearing that is extremely inspirational. I would love to get some advice from you before we jump into the mother side of things, just on the entrepreneurial side of, for those who are listening, in terms of finding that passion. I know you said you had started to build this content out of just things that you enjoyed. So what advice do you have for women who are perhaps in a stay-at-home mom role or in a full-time working role and are looking to create a little bit of a different reality for themselves? And how do they find something that lights them up or gives them a little bit of hope that things can shift?
Yeah, I would say on a practical side, like making a list of things that you are really good at, your things that you think are really fun to do, like having hobbies, like writing these things down, and also imagining what a day in the life, your ideal life, would look like. Right? Like for me, I knew that I wanted to be home. That was huge for me. I also knew that I had a passion for travel. I had a passion for personal finance. So coming from a place of, okay, I might not be an expert. I think that's another thing. People feel like I have to be like an expert at something to actually go in on that. And a lot of people actually just want to hear the journey or hear like you going through it and like what that's like peeling back the curtain. So you don't have to be an expert. What I do think it's important, especially if you're in the content creation route, is to just start, is to just create. And it's going to be messy. It's not going to be perfect. But when you're getting started, no one's looking. So that's a great time to mess up, make mistakes, because no one sees this anyway, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you need the practice. You need the reps in. And I'll give an example, like a recent example. So I have realized that Instagram Reels is really popular. It's very popular. It's a great discovery tool. A lot of different brands are looking at Instagram Reels. That's what they want. And I knew that I wanted to work with more brands as a content creator. Like I wanted this to be a bigger income stream for me. But instead of waiting for potential clients to come on my lap, like to be like, hey, Danielle, I want to hire you for Reels, I said, you know what? I'm going to build my portfolio. I don't know how to do Reels. I'm just going to figure it out. And I've been working on this for the last 3 months and just posting daily of different types of Reels. And now I have a portfolio body of work that I can say, hey, here's what I'm doing. And here's an example of like what I can do for you. So I wasn't perfect. It's still not perfect. I'm still learning. But tying together your passions, putting yourself out there and building your body of work that you can showcase later, I think is so important as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, like as we start to create more content or, in this case, record more episodes for this podcast, right? We become more and more confident in ourselves and reminding ourselves that we are very capable of doing whatever it is that we want to do. So I love that. I really think just getting out of our own way and starting is perhaps the biggest barrier for a lot of us. Question for you around perhaps those voices who are, I don't want to say judgmental, but are perhaps a little bit more critical of you than you originally anticipated. How do you deal with some of those voices? And I'm thinking a little bit more beyond the extended family. I think there's something to be said for the opinions of those that you trust, but more in terms of creating content and putting it out there and getting people's feedback. How do you support yourself and kind of navigate through some of those maybe less than stellar comments?
Yeah, I think that hearing it out, like sometimes, let's say you get like a negative comment on an IG reel or something that you created. Sometimes you can't avoid it, right? Sometimes you will still see it. And then it's your decision. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to let this unknown person derail you from your goals and derail you from what you're working on? Are you going to incorporate what they said and maybe take it as feedback, right? It's really up to you what you decide. But sometimes it's unavoidable. Like you see something and you kind of will have an emotional response to it. And for me, like I am sort of emotional, I would say. So I'll see something and it'll be like kind of disappointing or it makes me sad or something like that. But then I just think about, what am I going to do with this information? Is it feedback? Is it going to help me? Or is it something I just can toss? You also want to take who is saying this into account, right? Like, where is it coming from? Is it coming from a place of just jealousy, from hatred? Is it coming from a place of like, I want to help you grow and I see this is way you can improve? So the sender matters and your decision, what you're going to do about it, matters as well. But if you're in the business of content creation in terms of like writing, photography, journalism, any of that, like anything that you're creating, you're opening yourself up to, the opinions of others. But for me, at least, the creation aspect is, I fall in love with it. Like I love it so much that opinions don't derail me from what I'm working on.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's such an important message in that we respond to it as we need to, right? And is it going to motivate us to make some additional changes to be better? Is this just from a person who perhaps is hurting and chose in this particular instance to portray that hate onto somebody else, right? I think it's important for us to remember that we can only control ourselves. So how are we going to take this information and process it in a way that helps us instead of hinders us? So I really love that and appreciate that. And I hope that those who are listening can take some motivation from, while that this may happen, it hopefully is not a hindrance or a block or a preventative measure for them to just begin. So I love that. So let's jump into the motherhood piece of this, because you've been doing this content creation and your blog and your podcast, moving us into full-time over the last handful of years. And you mentioned it briefly, right? You found out you were pregnant as you were on the cusp of this transition. What did that journey look like for you, the motherhood piece of this? What came up for you? What fears came up for you? What excitements came up for you? Walk us through that.
Yeah, it's so funny. So my husband and I would joke with him. I would be like, babe, I think once I quit my job, I'm going to get pregnant. And it literally happened. So a part of me feels like, I wonder if, not that my job was like toxic or anything like that, but it was stressful. It was high demand. And I kind of have a feeling like maybe universe was like, okay, if you leave, now you're opening up yourself to growing your family. So that was that was big to me.
Took some pressure off. Yeah.
Yeah, it took some pressure off. And it's interesting. It's interesting to see like that did come true. But motherhood was an exciting journey, especially like when we found out a couple of months, I think I was like 7 weeks or 8 weeks pregnant at that time. And it was like literally like, it was a lot because I knew I was leaving my job, and I had actually also had 500 plus hours of sick time that I could have used. I mean, I was working in corporate for 7 years and I never really took sick time, and I just had accumulated so much. And that was a question. We're like, okay, well, if we stay in corporate throughout the pregnancy, like I can actually have a fully funded maternity leave. And still, I was like, nah, I'm ready to go. Like, I'm ready to go. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. The discernment was there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I'm committed. I'm ready to go. Like everything aligned where it's like, even though this was super attractive, I felt like I just needed to go off and be on my own. And for me, the first trimester was really difficult because here I am as a brand new entrepreneur, literally trying to figure out her schedule, trying to figure out how she's going to get more clients. And I'm in bed exhausted and feeling awful. So I remember around like September, October, that time I would like go to my husband. I'm like, babe, I feel like I'm failing. Like I'm supposed to be doing all these things. And he was just like, listen, you're growing life. Like life is within you and you need to honor that space. So if you need to just chill out and not do all the things as a new entrepreneur, like that's okay. So that helped give me permission to be like, I need to rest. I need to, whatever I need to do to take care of myself and my child, like that is also a priority. And even if I'm working at odd hours. So the constructs of 9 to 5 is when you're working was like, went out the window very quickly for me, since I realized, okay, I'm inspired at 3 a.m. That's when I'm going to actually get to work, A big lesson I also learned is that I wasn't in control, right? A lot of things in in my pregnancy journey was I did not have control over like how I felt in my first, second, third trimester. So it allowed me to be adaptable and to go with the flow, which helped prepare me when we found out that I had preeclampsia. And that is a huge, I had to get rushed to the hospital, all of that. But understanding early on that, okay, I have to give up control a little bit at this point really helped me feel more confident and not freak out too much because I wasn't being as productive as I thought I should have.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge piece, I think, to the mom journey as it is to the entrepreneurial journey, right? This desire or pressure more likely to be as productive as we can throughout the day because we only have so much time, or we have these goals we set on ourselves and we have to be checking everything off the list because that's what we do as women. And it's unfortunate. There's a lot of external pressures I think that we internalize to think that we need to be working 9 to 5, or if we have some time away from the kids, we got to be doing something with it. When really in reality, if we look at it, if we could trust that taking care of ourselves or resting because we are growing life, or resting our brains because we did just work with a client or we need some rest, just because that is absolutely perfect. And if we don't do that, I feel like our bodies are going to eventually make us do it anyway. So I think there's a lot to be said for kind of trusting and navigating and giving yourself permission to make the next best decision as you get more information. And I want to touch a little bit on, and you had shared this with me a bit, and I think it's so valuable, the preparation that you did for your maternity leave. Granted, that kind of got sped up a bit, right, with the diagnosis that you had for preeclampsia and the urgency of that matter. So can you walk us through a little bit in terms of what your preparation looked like for the birth of your son and the time that you were going to allow yourself to have to recover and heal and bond with him?
Yes, yes. And it's funny enough, I literally just wrote an article, which I'll share with you, about how I planned my parental leave. So we knew that we wanted to have like US standards of like 3 months. Like we knew we wanted that. We knew that we could not get that time back with our son. So as soon as we could, we sat down together and we made a plan. We said, okay, if we want to have 3 months off, not working, we need to save 3 months worth of expenses. And both me and also my husband. So we're looking at combining, like, how much money do we spend per month as a household? Because we're going to take care of the entire household. So that was really, really important. Reviewing our expenses, we came up with a dollar amount of like how much money we need to cover per month. And we multiplied that by 3. With that amount, we were like, whoo, that's quite a bit. It's quite a bit. But like coming together and coming up with a game plan was so powerful because now we knew what we were fighting for. We were fighting for this time to be with our son, and we had a dollar amount as like our financial quantitative goal. Now, with that being said, to get to that, right, to get to that goal, I had to kind of take a step back and as an entrepreneur, reconstruct, like how am I going to actually contribute to helping to reach that goal? So I sat down, I prioritized different types of products I wanted to do, different types of launches, like coming up with, okay, for the next couple of months, how can I set myself up for success business-wise? Along with that, I knew that passive income was going to be important part of that piece because I knew, okay, if I'm able to create something once and it's able to continuously earn, or maybe I'm not creating it, I'm just like promoting something like an affiliate relationship or something like that, where I can earn when I'm not necessarily working, I thought that was going to lead me to success anyway. Like even after the birth of my son, I could still be able to lean and rely on that. So a lot of what I was working on is just like laying the foundation, scaling my income, figuring out ways that I could actually continue to grow. So also what I also did is I also kind of gave up on my time consuming clients, like my freelance writing clients, because I was like, the likeliness of me being able to continue this is not there, right? So what can I slash and what can I also like build up and improve upon was very, very important. We also had opened up a new bank account. Like I'm really big on like opening bank accounts for different goals that you have and different large bills that you have as well. So we opened up a baby fund account. We both had access to it. We both would contribute to it. And then on a monthly basis, we assess our goals. We would see, okay, like how much do we progress? Did we progress enough? Did we reach our goal for the month? Did we not reach our goal for the month? Is 3 months even realistic, right? Like, can we actually do that? Like of course we want to, but is that even possible? The last thing I'll say here also is that because my husband has a 9 to 5 and our state has a plan, a parental leave plan that you can pay into. So we were able to tap into that on his side where he was able to continue to get a percentage of his paycheck, which was helpful. Like that was very, very helpful. So as you're planning your parental leave, see if your state has a program that you can tap into to, supplement some of your income. So it's a multi-pronged approach. So making more money, thinking about how do I like streamline and cut off things, and taking advantage of whatever state benefits you have available to you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's such a big thing. There's a lot of, I think, oversight when it comes to planning for like big life changes or whatever, in terms of just seeing what resources are out there to support you through that. I mean, we all pay our taxes, I hope, right? We're paying into, and when we're working, we're paying these taxes into these programs. So the power of that is being able to leverage these resources that are available for you. So I love that reminder. And I do hope that gives some women out there some inspiration to look into supporting themselves that way. I also loved what you said about this evaluation, right? Of constantly, or every couple of weeks, every month, evaluating where you're at and evaluating your business as it exists. Because I think there's also a unwillingness sometimes to let go of things, or changing your goals, or letting go of some clients that you've worked so hard on retaining and producing for. And there's this sadness almost, or disappointment in letting some of that go. So I think there's something to be said for pivoting and trusting that as our life experiences change, we must navigate them and find a situation that does work for us. So I think just that big lesson is so important, of recognizing the need to reevaluate sometimes and make some changes. So I love that. And I appreciate you highlighting that. I want to jump into more of your motherhood journey and this kind of process of coming to terms quickly, right? Very quickly with the preeclampsia diagnosis, and kind of this scenario of being, immediately entered into the hospital, and kind of this journey. If you're comfortable, I'd love for you to share that with us, because I imagine there's quite a few other women out there who have had perhaps similar experiences.
Yeah. So I had all these grandiose plans of having a maternity shoot, having a baby shower, all of these things that happen like your third trimester. So I had all these wonderful plans, which many of them did not get realized. But that's when adaptability and just like, going with the flow, and also not being so tied into what should or what has to happen. So it's a lesson I've learned very early on, when I was pregnant. But we were able to go on a baby moon, and we went to a couple states over in Vermont, which is one of my favorite states. And the next day after that baby moon, we had a 32-week appointment. And at the 32-week appointment, things were kind of a little hairy. They're a little concerned. I shared a bit of information with them, and they were like, yeah, why don't you just go to the hospital now? I was like, okay, all right, regular routine, I guess. I didn't know. I really didn't know what was going on. But we got to the hospital. And at this time, actually, because of COVID, like I couldn't even have my husband with me at the office. So here I am, like I had to, come pick him up, and we ran to the hospital, not really knowing what was going on. Eventually, they were like, well, you have preeclampsia, your high blood pressure, you have my blood pressure is really high, which was of concern, causing concern. And mind you, I never had high blood pressure before. So this was, pregnancy related. And they were like, okay, well, to be fair, we have to, take him out now. And we're like, now? Wait, now? Right now? They were like, yes. Then they come back a couple minutes later. They're like, well, actually, like our NICU is at capacity. There were actually quite a bit of expecting mothers who were also like similar to me, 32 weeks. And they had literally no space in a NICU. And because he was a preemie, they knew he was going to have to stay longer. So they were like, we're going to transfer you to another hospital. And then here I am, like super sad and devastated, because this is my team. Like I knew my medical team, and now I'm going to another institution. So it was very emotional and very also jarring to just kind of be like, hey, you're at risk and this needs to happen now. So we actually ended up going to another institution, which actually ended up being a blessing. So I was freaking out over this, and it actually was a blessing because their approach was a lot different. So their approach was, we're going to wait and see, and we're going to try to get you to the 34-week line where he'd be able to sustain on his own better, gestational age wise. So, and again, my medical team told me, listen, we're going to take it a day at a time. We're going to see how things go. So every day was like, we're going to just, again, I don't have control over this. We're just going to wait and see. But to be fair, I feel like the 2 weeks that I was in the hospital with my husband actually like had to leave his job early. I couldn't really work besides, whatever I could do on my phone. But I feel like that 2 weeks was like so special for us because it was just the two of us. Like no outside people can come in because of the COVID restrictions, just the two of us. And we had each other's back. We had to make some really hard decisions in terms of like, what are we going to do next? But there were so many laughs and so many like just amazing special moments. And even today, like my husband always says to me, like, sometimes we need to go back to that. Like it was crazy, but like that love that we had and the support that we had for each other was amazing. So yeah, it was a crazy 2 weeks, but we were 1 day shy of hitting the 34-week mark where they were like, okay, we need to go off and get him out. And also after that, he was in the NICU for 3 weeks. So every day having to go to the hospital, the ups and downs of like having a preemie and being at the NICU. But it was an incredible journey that opened my eyes to a lot and definitely is in alignment with sometimes you're not in control and you have to just figure it out and to trust that you have all the tools that you need to make it through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to be said for changes in kind of this plan to get you to a place where you're meant to be, right? You were meant to perhaps be with that new medical team who were able to take it day by day and get your son to a point where he was a little bit further along in his development and gave you and your husband that time together. I want to touch on just quickly, like, was there any frustration that you had with the kind of runway up to that point? I mean, not having been aware that this perhaps was a possible diagnosis, or were there any indications that you felt maybe were missed for you? I mean, what did any of those frustrations come to play for you?
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I had done a little bit of research and, it did say that like Black women are more prone to having preeclampsia, but throughout my pregnancy journey, there was no real like, okay, this is a real concern, or it was kind of like, oh, this is interesting, but there was no like alarm until literally they were told me to go to the hospital. And even at the hospital, it wasn't like, hey, like it was just like very sudden. So I would have loved to have seen like, hey, this is something that we're going to be on the lookout for. And we are. Being concerned is not necessarily always a bad thing. It's putting it on your radar. I feel like if we would have known, I would have definitely had a different financial plan, right? I would have wished they had expressed concern that this is a possibility. Doesn't mean that's going to happen. There's no percentages, just let me know. Hey. So with that being said, like, when we were leaving the hospital, the medical team was saying, okay, if you do decide to continue and have another baby, here are the things that you need to be on the lookout for. And I appreciated that because it frames it in a position as like, this is a likeliness. This is something that could happen. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. It could happen, which could alter your plans, So I was definitely frustrated with the whole sudden. It was very sudden, but now looking back at it, there were signs all along. And I don't know, maybe they were not hiding it, but maybe they were like keeping it from me not to cause stress. But I enjoy being informed and knowing that it's a potential possibility that I could have planned for.
Yeah. And when you're informed, right, you're empowered, right? You can make choices that make the most sense for you and your family. So, I mean, I guess I don't know which we would prefer, right? They just weren't seeing those warning signs or they were keeping them from you. Don't know what we would prefer in that scenario.
Yes.
But does this alter your kind of process moving forward as I'm making an assumption here if you're considering, additional children, like how does this inform your choices moving forward with your medical team or with planning ahead of time for additional choices and changes? Like what changes for you now?
Yeah. If that is in the possibility of like having more children, it would be like getting a team involved ASAP. So not kind of just like, oh, well, we'll see. No, like I would like to have the team in place. It also has changed our outlook to really think of like, pregnancies is it's a beautiful thing, but it could be also very scary, a very, very scary, it could be a very scary situation. So definitely have given a lot of thought and a lot of pause to just be intentional and also like seek support out early so that everyone is covered as early as possible. So it's changed everything. It's changed everything of how we're thinking about things in the future and my outlook as well.
Yeah. How did you support yourself? So when we think about pregnancy and we think about birth, like as women, we are doing a lot of heavy lifting, right? Our bodies are changing. We're growing human life. And there's twofold right now. Like your son was born, he needed immediate medical care, went into the NICU. What did your support team look like for your healing and your transition back into your body just for yourself?
Yeah. So having a lot of space, which is why the maternity leave, like having the financial piece was like so important because we didn't have to worry about taking care of the day-to-day bills because we had that covered, it could be a big stressor. Finances could be a very big stressor. Also having each other, me and my spouse being there we're there for like weeks together, just ready to like do whatever it took. We also had a lot of family support as well. Like our family was there to help us make some big decisions, help us to advocate for ourselves or ask questions that we weren't thinking about, especially since this was our first kid. And then having a lot of time to heal and just like for a long time, honestly, I couldn't even watch like a TV show where there was like a mother or a kid or just like a pregnant woman. Like it was just really emotional for me. I still, months later, I'm at 5 months now. I could still kind of get a little triggered a little bit, a lot less, but like having the space to just like feel to grow. Also, a lot of our medical team also asks us questions about like, literally, they still ask me every time we go into the doctor's office, like, how are you feeling? Do you have negative thoughts? Like, how can we support you? So family support, your medical team support as well, and just giving yourself space to just heal and just your body is changing. Body's still changing. Yeah. So it's a big transition. It was a big transition, but I felt like I had a great support system to help me through.
Yeah. It's really quite remarkable when you can surround yourself with the right team, just how powerful it can be in terms of the personal growth and healing and support. And I want to talk a little bit about, before we wrap this up, what your day-to-day looks like now. So you've had your son home for just about 5 months, right? There is your entrepreneurial journey, your content creating. What does your day-to-day look like being a stay-at-home mom, essentially, if I remember correctly, and being a full-time entrepreneur?
Yeah. So we made a decision that we did not want to do daycare or have childcare. That was a very intentional decision. Very hard too, because, okay, now how are we going to do this entrepreneur thing? So my husband and I sat down and we were thinking about our schedules and how can I get work done but still be home? And a lot of that is like, we decided that shifts were going to be our like go-to. So, and my husband does day trading as well. So he has to kind of be on at certain times, especially early in the morning. So we have shifts and I get to work maybe two or three shifts of uninterrupted time, which is very helpful. But also we've gotten to in a cadence where there are days that I don't have any support at all. So I have a routine in place where it's like in the morning, I know I need to get him fed. Once he's fed, he's pretty good for like an hour or two, which allows me to do my work. So another thing I really learned early on also is that a lot of what I do is like meetings, like interviews or like conversations with potential clients or clients. So having coverage is important. So I'm not going to schedule any meetings unless I know I have coverage, either a family member or my husband. So those are like, I have set times that I could work, but then I have set times where I can actually do face-to-face stuff. And sticking to that schedule is so important. And if for any reason let's say I need more time, I just ask like, hey, I need to get this done. Like, can you spot me an extra 30 minutes or something like that? So having a conversation, but sticking to the times we set out, because those times were intentionally set. And then also those times we also say to ourselves, okay, if it's your shift, you could work or you could just hang out. Even if you just need to like get away or just take a shower or something, right? So shifts have been really helpful for me. And also just not having meetings when I know I don't have childcare. Like that's really big. That's really big.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? Because it's like you have to be able to receive, right? The help. Asking for help is one part of it, but then actually being able to give yourself permission to receive that support from your partner or from family members, or even taking the pressure off and going to find daycare, right, is a big piece of the puzzle. And I want to talk a little bit about that because while right now, like this is absolutely working for you, I think there's always something to be said for, right, that pivot or evaluating if perhaps, support starts to fall apart or doesn't become as consistent as you need it to be in order to support your work. And I would love for those listening to just touch a little bit on any advice that you have for perhaps taking that financial tricks and tips that you put into place and implemented for maternity leave into how to save for childcare. So do you have any advice for women who are trying to find help for themselves in order to give themselves that space to create or rest or, do whatever lights them up in that moment? And what advice do you have for them as they're trying to build that support for themselves, whether it be financially or asking and receiving?
Yeah. So I think it's important to have clarity around what you need support in, right? Like, is it a babysitter? Is it a nanny? Is it a actual daycare? Like, what kind of support do you actually need? Then also, how much does it cost, right? How much does it cost? Is that feasible? If it's not feasible, can you pare that down a little bit? Maybe you don't need all 5 days. Maybe you just need 2 days. And that works within your budget. And I think one of the great things about the principle of saving is that once you know how to save and set goals for yourself, it becomes the same routine. You open a bank account, you have a goal, you save towards the goal. Like everything I've ever saved for is all the same framework, all the same framework. So I think understanding what you need, pricing it out, and seeing if you can find something that is within your budget I think that is very helpful. I also wanted to kind of step back a bit and also walk you through my day because I realized I didn't actually get to share that. So my husband's shift is before 9 a.m. So if I wake up at 8, I only have an hour to work. If I wake up at 6 or 4 a.m., then I have all this time to work, So that's like the first shift is like I try to wake up and I try to see how much I can get done before 9 a.m. And that's his shift. So I can wake up and work. And then at 9 a.m., I'm kind of getting baby K into his routine, perhaps feeding or just kind of like hanging out. I have he's laying on me and I'm working on with one hand, a lot of one hand action going on during that time. And then maybe making breakfast as well for us. Then by 11 a.m. is my solely work time. So I have 11 to 1:30 where he takes care of him and I can just solely work. So this is podcast interviews. These are calls that I have to take or just creative time to actually work and get stuff done. 1:30 to around 3 o'clock, I'm still probably doing stuff with the one hand because it's now my shift again. But I've typically found that I'm pretty much done with my workday by 3:30. The earlier I wake up, the earlier my day ends. So I do definitely try to see if I can get up at like 6, 6:30, 5, sometimes 5, depending on the day, 5, 6:30, but I'm done by 3 p.m. I do some days have a 6 to 9 p.m. shift where I get to have additional time to work for me. So sometimes I use that, but sometimes I don't. So waking up early, the shifts have been really, really helpful. Not taking meetings when I don't have exclusive time. And so far that works for us, but it took us a lot of time to kind of work through the shifts, like what shifts make sense. So we've had a lot of conversations about that, but for now, we found something that works. But I'm sure as he gets older, things will change and we'll just be changing with it.
Yeah. Does every day look fairly similar for you?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
it does? Okay.
Yeah. Every day.
I think back to just current scenario, because I love this idea. My husband works from home or has a job that he can work from home. He goes into an office a couple of days a week. But I'm just thinking that his days don't always look the same. So it's difficult to kind of have shifts the same because he has meetings with clients and, I have episodes that I'm trying to record. So I love that concept, but it's the importance of that is to get on the same page with your partner and see how can we make even one day a week perhaps look like that and give yourself some extra time if perhaps daycare is not in the picture for budgetary reasons or just personal desires. So I do appreciate you walking us through that because I think that concept is pretty remarkable and hopefully can be adapted by somebody listening to fit their own personal needs. One more thing I want to touch on is how you support yourself from a emotional, personal perspective. So in your downtime or, in these shifts that you have, what is important to you in terms of downtime or how do you support yourself? What's the fun hobbies? How do you recharge? What does that look like?
Yeah, things are a lot different now. I used to recharge by like going on my spin bike and just like doing an intense workout or like going for extremely long runs, which I just haven't had a chance to go back into. So I think for me, when it comes to recharging is resting, like just laying around, sometimes with TV, sometimes with not TV, but just like being able to just kind of turn off the brain is very, very helpful for me. Because it's the summer months, also getting outside has been very helpful. So going on walks and just barbecuing and just kind of enjoying the summer months before things kind of like, get colder and it gets a little bit more difficult. So I used to get my nails done and stuff like that, kind of like pamper it, but yeah. I don't really have that much time anymore. I just think baking in some you time. They say a lot that they're like, oh, well, you can sleep when baby sleeps. That hasn't worked for me.
Yeah.
that for me personally, it hasn't worked for me. But I also find that if I am trying to recharge with the baby with me, it's like we're both recharging together. Like whatever we're doing, we're going to do it together. But it's something I think I'm still learning. It's only been 5 months. So I'm still on the path to like discovering how to do it better. But I think ending the workday at like 3:30, I think has been very helpful. And people are like, oh, well, what do you do after 3:30? I don't know. Relax, chill, like
hang with my baby.
Hang out with my baby. Time just goes by really fast. Yeah. So that's how it is so far. But I think the big theme for me in this episode where we talked about is just like being open to adapting, So if something changes in our schedule and it doesn't work for me anymore or work for us anymore, like having a conversation and seeing what could we do to make something fit now.
Yeah, I love that. I think the key, right, is you always have a different choice. You can make a different decision to change something that works out better for you in that moment. And you're so right. A 5-month-old feels a lot different than a 10-month-old, and it feels a lot different than my 19-month-old. So as we as moms go through this journey with the development of our kids, we are going to change. We are going to absolutely find what works for us then, most definitely does not work for us now. And how do we support ourselves through that? So let's wrap this up here. Give us just a quick overview. How can our listeners engage with you and find you with what you have going on right now?
Yes. Well, again, thank you so much, Emily, for having me on the show. This was awesome. You could connect with me over at my podcast, a Thought Card Podcast, which is an affordable luxury travel and personal finance podcast. Would love for you to tune in. Let me know what your takeaways were from this episode. You can hit me up on Twitter. I'm at The Thought Card on Twitter or at the Danielle Desir on Instagram. And I'd love to connect with you. Share with me your tips. What do you put in your baby bag? That's what I want to know because I keep forgetting stuff.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that. Well, thank you. We will make sure to link all of that in our show notes so all of our listeners have a simple, easy time to engage with you. And again, I appreciate you and thank you for being here. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please help us out and leave a review wherever you listen, and consider sharing with your friends. If you're interested in learning a bit more about the project or want to share your story, please visit our website linked in our show notes below.